I'd love to introduce our next speakers. Adam Melson, a fellow InfoTruster, Director of Partnerships, and Harry Browne, the VP of TV, Audio, and Display Innovation from Tinuiti, another treasured partner of ours. So take it away, guys.
Thank you. Awesome. Get the clicker.
Sorry.
Good.
All you.
All right. So corralling the complex. We're going to talk about this fragmented media landscape. And to start, we're going to frame the challenge again. We're going to validate the challenge that we've talked about throughout the day so far, with a little bit of a twist, though, on really activation of that challenge. To go over some of those legacy approaches and shortcomings, as well as the outcomes that we then want to have after we review where we are and where we want to go with our goal and purpose in mind. So the challenge, by a show of hands, how many of you or your teams have run into measurement challenges for your media strategy in the last 2 years? Couple hands, couple denials. It's good. So a lot. And you're in good company. So a stat like this is not surprising. Fewer than 2/3 of marketing professionals worldwide have high confidence in their measurement across channels. Fewer than 2/3. We're in a unique industry where, and the one over here, you can be up to 23% not confident at all and still get budget, but then you have to report on what you did with that. I don't know any other industry. Your electrician, 23% confident. Like your doctor, like your accountant, that'll work out well. So what are we supposed to do here? The lack of confidence in measurement isn't just something you're experiencing also. This is something that all the way up to the top. CMOs, 62% of CMOs surveyed were moderately confident in their data analytics and insights. And why? Like why are all of us like, I'm kind of confident? It's because of this mess. You've seen this slide before, right? You've seen this chart. 300-400 logos of media platforms, technologies, all trying to stack together, all wanting to be acquired, all wanting to continue to add bells and whistles and get your money, but also show you all of their different ways that they are the source of truth of your data. And there's so many disparate sources of truth for your data. I'm not going to post the Wanamaker quote here, but it rings true 100 years later. Hundreds of options, fragmented measurement. Then you have to report on results using that, which can paralyze an organization into just, you know what? We're not going to make any changes at all. So I was told just last week from a lead, there were multiple sources of truth. So leadership believed there was no source of truth, and they did not move forward with the change. Paralyzed. So when we look at this challenge, we're looking at marketing budgets are spread across a multitude of those 300-400 logos in the previous slide. Measurement is fragmented, if not entirely disparate from other channels, including those that are considered historically awareness, which Harry will get into. New platforms, there's more choice, and as that maturity and adoption curve continues to grow, that choice becomes more expensive, and your ROAS goes down. And the last part, change in platforms. There is a new platform or a new tool that will come out next quarter, the next year, and audiences will move back and forth, and you have to keep up with that. So with that, with all of this mess, I'm going to hand it over to Harry to talk about how we're going to be seeking some better informed measurement with this.
Thank you. So I really like that Lumascape slide that we just showed because I think it shows how complicated and in many ways stressful this business can be for us as marketers and people in the ad tech industry. But I think it's also important to think about how complex this landscape is just from the perspective of people consuming media. This is a chart of a bunch of different popular streaming services, social media services, and their uptake, and the number of days that it took for these services to reach 1 million users. And you can see the speed at which this landscape is changing. Netflix, it took, what was that, 3-4 years, something on that order? Threads did it in an hour. That's how fast this is moving. And so, like you said, audiences are just moving all over the place. And it's really important for us as advertisers, not just to reach them in all these different environments, but to be able to say something meaningful about performance in all of these different environments. And most importantly, how performance overlaps and works together. And that's just getting ever more challenging by the day. Lots of these platforms, Google, Amazon, they operate in many cases as walled gardens, where it is very difficult to get data out of one environment, out of another environment, and cross-reference them and understand how they're playing together as part of a holistic marketing strategy. And so that just makes measurement a very big challenge. You can go into each of these platforms and rely on their own tools that they provide you. And in many of these cases, the tools are very good for that platform. But the key element, understanding how each of them is playing together as part of this cohesive, full funnel investment strategy, that gets very challenging in this landscape. There's a couple of tools that people have used historically to address this kind of an issue. Some of them are things like multi-touch attribution, analytics platforms, but those are just getting harder and harder because of things like signal loss, identity going away, cookie loss. We've talked about that ad nauseum today. So in that context, we tend to lean towards MMM as our preferred solution to do measurement in this landscape. But MMM has its own problems in a lot of contexts. One, lots of MMM is observational. It is just looking at performance yesterday and saying, spend went up, orders went up, that's probably related. I'm not totally sure. And yeah, I mean, that maybe, but we don't actually know that without real evidence, without a real experimental design framework behind that. And then the other problem with MMM is the speed. I mean, I'm sure many of you marketers in this room have relied on MMM for your campaigns, and it can take 3 months, 6 months to get a read. I was at an event a couple weeks ago, or I guess it was a couple months ago at this point, where the CMO of a major organization got on stage and was trying to make the point that YouTube was the most effective channel for their campaign. And they were relying on the results of their most recent MMM to make that point. And the most recent MMM they were using was for fiscal year 2022. And this was in May of 2024. And so I think that really elucidates the idea that MMM just takes a really long time to get going because you have to corral data from all of these different environments. You have to pull Excel sheets from 8 different platforms and get some poor soul to corral them all together. It's just really hard. And so you need a solution that can actually give you measurement fast enough to take some sort of action off of it. Because if you don't get that forward-looking action, the measurement's really not worth anything. It's really not, because the only point in knowing how your campaign is done is if it informs what you should do next.
So the legacy shortcomings that we're looking at here and how we can move past these. That consent implication, some users do, some users don't. Some are limited by the options that they select. Also, however you have this set up might impact that number as well, or that audience as well. Inconsistent identifiers, some will provide information, some won't. And this is nothing new. This is nothing new. In page 25 of our book, if you don't have one, grab one over there. The author of this book is sitting right next to the table as well, if you'd like to get him to sign it. But on page 25, eventually consumers started to wonder what companies were doing with all that data and whether the product or service they received in return was really worth it. Give me your email. Give me your date of birth. Give me your state. And give me your app access. All for what? We get an email from you every day that we delete and a 10% off coupon code on my birthday? No. There is continued distrust in providing that information. So where do we go from here? I think we still need to dig in just a little further on where this is coming from and some of the next steps that we can then know where we've come from so that we can make the best next dollar decision here.
So I won't belabor this point too much because we've talked about it quite a bit already today, but the privacy regulations and the laws that are out there really put constraints around measurement across these diverse environments. There's lots of new regulations and new changes that have come out over the past few months and years. App tracking transparency, cookie deprecation. We've talked about this all morning, so I won't go into too much more detail here, but I think you're all familiar with the fact that measurement is just getting harder as we lose the signals that we have traditionally relied on. And then, of course, the privacy regulations. This is a hodgepodge of different rules, different frameworks, and it just makes it hard. That's really the bottom line. It's just hard. So what do we do about it? How do we get an ideal solution in this incredibly complex identity and privacy landscape? At Tinuiti, we think about measurement in this context on 2 pillars. The first pillar is incrementality, and the second pillar is an updated, rapid media mix modeling. I'm going to get into both. I'm going to start with incrementality. This is a buzzword that gets thrown out all the time. Clients come and they say, well, we want to do incrementality. And we say, okay, talk to us. Tell us what you're thinking about incrementality. And they say, I don't know. That's just, I heard that word and I think I'm supposed to do it, but I don't really know what it is. This is the absolute cornerstone of pretty much everything to do with marketing, especially when you are running multiple channels that aren't communicating with each other. You need to understand not just the performance of your channel as measured by the channel, but how that channel is performing above and beyond the other investments that you are making at the time. Let's say you are running a search campaign, a social campaign, a streaming campaign, an out-of-home campaign. When you're running that out-of-home campaign, you can get some sort of measurement of it, but you need to know what it got you above and beyond what you did on search, social, streaming, and everything else that you're spending. And not only that, what you would have gotten had you not marketed at all. Ultimately, that's really how you're going to make the right decision with your dollars. And there are a lot of different ways that you can approach incrementality. And importantly, there are ways you can approach incrementality within this privacy context, within this ID-free context. At Tinuiti, we have a whole playbook for this. And if any of you are interested in talking about it, come find me afterwards. I'm happy to get into the details. But some of the ways that you can do this, things like geo-testing, DMA holdout testing, audience testing, PSA testing. You can serve audiences public service announcement, measure the response rate between the exposed and the control group. You can hold out whole states and see the difference in response rate between states that got ads and states that didn't. Importantly, particularly the geo one, that is a way to measure true incrementality with experimental design that doesn't have anything to do with user level identification. You avoid the privacy concept entirely. Really powerful and really important to understanding how your dollars are moving the needle above and beyond everything else that you're doing in market. Now, the other side of the coin is MMM. This is critical because when you are investing in all of these different channels, you need to know how they are playing together. And most importantly, you need to know what to do next. I said up top that one of the problems with MMM is that it is slow and labor intensive. The way that we think about MMM is entirely based on programmatic inputs. So we set up our MMM through API connections with all of the different channels that a client is running. So we will pull in data daily in the same format every single day from Meta, from Google, from Netflix, from whoever they're running ads on. And that goes into the MMM every day, and the MMM updates every day. And importantly, that gives you the ability to see performance fast enough to take an action. I don't have to wait till May 2022 or May 2024 to see my 2022 results. I can see them a day later, a week later, fast enough for me to actually make an investment decision. The other thing that's really important is having your MMM based on that concept of incrementality. These two pillars work together. Most MMM, like I said at the top, is just observational. Spend one up, orders one up, that's probably related. That's not good enough. You need to have an MMM that is based in incrementality. The way that we've built ours is based on the concept of Bayesian priors. We take the results of those incrementality experiments and we set them as priors in the model. So we know that we're starting with a kernel of truth. We're starting by saying we know that this channel, based on an experiment, based on true design, generates this performance on an incremental basis. And then we get more data and we update our priors as we go from there. But we're not starting from nothing. We're starting from a kernel of truth. And what that means is it can help inform the next best decision. We know that if we increase spend here, we're going to get lift of some degree because we've seen it in the experiments that's validated by the data. That is the key. The programmatic setup is really important. Trash data, trash decisions. We've talked about this, I think, pretty much ad nauseum today. But if you don't have the right data, you're just not going to be able to make any good decisions going forward. So if you pull in that data consistently every single day in the same format and you validate it through automated procedures, that's going to help you make sure that your measurement is as robust as possible. There are other things that you can do as well. We have set up MMMs that aren't even based on revenue outcomes or order outcomes. You can set up modeling based on things like brand awareness to look right at the top of the funnel. How do my investments lead to incremental gains in things like aided awareness, purchase intent, consideration, favorability? Really powerful tools for making those upper funnel decisions and making a full funnel holistic strategy. And then this is really the key. The point of an MMM is to inform your next decision. You don't want to just be homework grading. It really doesn't matter how I did yesterday if it doesn't tell me something about what I'm supposed to do tomorrow. So when you're thinking about your measurement and you're thinking about the frameworks of evaluating these channels, it has to be based around the concept of next best dollar. If I have another dollar, another $1,000, another $1 million to play with, where would I put it? What should I do next? And so we build our MMM around concepts of saturation curves so that we can answer that question. And because it's based in those incrementality frameworks, that really helps you get to that next best decision. All right.
All right, so based off of what we both talked about today, I want to almost take a step back and say the biggest takeaway is change. Something has to change. And we actually have to advance that change, not just say we're going to do it, but actually moving forward with a plan. But before we even do that, it starts with purpose. Like, what do we want to accomplish? And I always love going with a reverse timeline. Like, a year from now, we're over here. We have everything we needed. We've been able to accomplish. What is that? What were we able to accomplish? And then working back step by step on what do we need to put in place to make that happen? What do we need to know to be able to hit that goal that we have, that purpose out of all of this? So otherwise, if it's just to get more data, that's not a purpose. Get all the data is not a good purpose. It's understanding what we're going to be able to do with that and look at our end outcome to move ahead with it. Let's look at our desired end state so we can pinpoint exactly where we need to change our current one. So now that we have that in mind, we've got a goal, a purpose behind collection, and we know what and where to satisfy our media measurement goal and outcome. And then lastly, the third one.
Yeah. It's all about the next best decision. You said it right there. You're focusing on your goal a year from now. Everything is building towards the future. It is just short-sighted to be trying to measure your channels to see how you did yesterday, solving yesterday's problems, fighting the last battle. It's all about tomorrow. It only matters how I did yesterday if it informs what I do today, tomorrow, in the future. That has to be the framework for all measurement. Thank you.
Thank you.